I don't know how to say this. We're at a very rough time when it comes to climate change because things aren't going right in the way that we thought they would. But I'll just point to one thing, a significant bit of news in its own way. If you take one part of a country that is seen almost as the obvious example of a part which just is not getting climate change and the problems, it's actually Texas. But there are two things happening in Texas that actually are quite shaking. One is it's undergone huge floods in the last 36 hours. Undergot huge areas of the state, including some of the rich agricultural land, is underwater. A direct effect of the changing climate. The other thing is, Texas is becoming quite significant as a centre of wind power, because the Texas plains are really very rich in the wretched thing. And in some ways, many Texans are beginning to see that the whole pattern is changing in terms of climate breakdown. And if that's happening in Texas, then I think we're in a good position to see what could happen. I suppose what you have to recognise at the moment is we're at a time when we really have to keep the work up, even more than we've been doing, even though it looks pretty grim. And I think there are several things to remember here. One is the confidence that climate is changing and is likely to be breaking down, is starting to break down, is very high among the climate scientists. The confidence that they're right in many ways is in some ways very reassuring. Against that, there are many things against us. The two obvious ones are Trump himself and what he stands for, and the way that wherever possible they're trying to close down even research into climate change. And the other, I think, is that, I don't know how to put this, in a way, the power of the oil companies and the coal as well is slowly starting to be recognised. Because essentially, you see it where you get major announcements. I think it was BP, wasn't it, which was sort of trying to pretend that it's going to be beyond petroleum. And now they've sort of come out in the open about it. But at the same time, some of the shareholders are saying, no, we should be doing the green stuff as well. And that's really unexpected. It comes from a different area. But the other main thing is we know more and more that in sheer economics, dealing with climate change is a very good thing to be doing in two different ways. If we don't do it, then it's going to get incredibly expensive to try and clear up the messes that are going to be made. But more important, it's cheap to do. It's an extraordinary thing. We've got a neighbour who's just having solar panels on the roof, and it's going to be costing, including a large battery, about £5,500. That 12 years ago would have cost about £14,000 or £15,000. And that's the change. It is actually, in fact, if you really want to generate electricity cheaply, almost every time, in most circumstances, you go for renewables. And of course, the oil companies are very worried about this. But it means that we really got to keep going from our point of view. It's difficult. I don't pretend that because they don't want to pretend otherwise. But it can be done. It has to be done. And what I think is the thing to remember is that bit by bit, sadly, we're going to see more and more sort of regional and district climate emergencies. We're going to see more areas where storms are tougher, they're bigger. We're going to see more examples of that affecting different countries. What we haven't seen yet, and I think one has to hate to say this, is a major climate disaster affecting a northern city. You remember Derna, 3 years ago, Derna, that seaport in northern Libya. There was a huge, massive sort of rainstorm many miles inland in the mountains, and the rain came down in a huge surge. I think it broke 2 dams in the process and took basically out a large part of the centre of the town. They still don't know how many people were killed. It's certainly in the thousands. People just washed out to sea. Now, if that had happened in London, in New York, somewhere else, sort of on a scale that we saw in New Orleans, but on a much worse scale, then that would be the sort of shake-up call. It's very difficult to have to say this, and in some ways I think the name of our game is to make people aware more, so the earlier that kind of thing happens, the quicker the action will be. The worst thing is to have major disasters in the north. The thought that we're getting routinely in the global south at huge cost to local communities. You get that in the north and then take no notice. And this is why I think it's so crucial now, against what you would feel you ought to be doing, is to keep saying, look, we've got to take this seriously. It is happening now, and remember it, and this is what it's going to mean otherwise. It's made more difficult. I know Ludi wanted me to talk about the military-industrial complexes as well. It's made more difficult because, for heaven's sake, we're now in a process where you're actually getting militarization increasing. And it's affected by Ukraine, it's affected by Gaza and the rest. Things are going against us there. And that really gives you the power, sort of the way that economies work at the present time. But in spite of all that, we have to keep going. There's no question about that. Then it becomes more and more urgent. We will see people getting this dawning on them, I think, more in the next 5 years. I think the next 5 years is absolutely key to this, because it is not too late to turn it round. I know many people are getting very depressed and think, no, it's too late, let's give up, let's enjoy life while we can. It isn't too late, and that's what we know. So all I would say, and I'm rambling now, I know, but what I'm really saying is that it's not an easy time, but there are very good reasons for seeing what we're doing, this and many other initiatives, and we just keep going. Any comments or questions, just join in, but that's all I want to say at the moment. So thank you.